Welcome to this DDI CADcast What's New series. I'm Michael Nolte. Today we're covering what's new in 2014 SOLIDWORKS Electrical. This is part 2 of a multi-part series. Here's a list of some of the items that we're covering today. So let's go and dive straight in and start taking a look at some of these items that are new for 2014. This very first one is called passive symbol. So I've already got a project open here. And essentially what it is the ability of when we go to create a symbol or modify an existing symbol, again Libraries tab, Symbols Manager, when we create a new one we actually have a new type and it's called passive symbols. And the idea behind the passive is that it has no electrical connectivity to it, so you can actually use it for purely symbols but yet still add it to your library. So here's one example of what you could do with it. So this, again, if I go into its properties, it's currently set to a passive symbol. And I'll go and open this up. It still has a miscellaneous connection point there, so it does have a point to drop it into. But when I go and drop this into my schematic here, I'm going to do that one. Oh, let's see, schematic tab and insert symbols. And let's see, let's go and go normal and drop it in. So that particular symbol has no electrical characteristics, but it's a great way to illustrate that that has a shielding around both the wires there. This next one is actually drawing contextual menu. So essentially it's the some new items that are available in the right-click menus. Specifically for title blocks. So if I right click over one of the schematics, I have this new item in the right click menu or contextual menu. So I've got an update, a replace, a remove, an open, and add to library. Whereas last year we just had a choose another title block. So they've definitely increased that. So it makes it real easy to go through and say do like a replace. I could pick out a different title block. And then go and replace that with the one that I did want. Again, still got to get everything to fit on the page there, but real easy to do that. This next one is 2D footprint thumbnails. Requires a little bit of setup, but let's go and kind of walk through it. So from the Processes tab, I'm going to go and add a 2D cabinet layout, and I'll just do it for the very first one. And accept, so I get a new cabinet layout, so go and open that up. And kind of the idea behind it is if I go cabinet layout, insert symbol, or if I go to a particular component, I can actually insert, let's see, let's go to this tab here. I can actually insert a generic component, or I can grab one of the regular schematics. So I'm just going to grab this one just for the heck of it. But suppose this was a proprietary item that you didn't want somebody, the end user, to see what your schematic looked like. So what we'd end up doing is going over to our library and go to the 2D Footprint Manager. I'll go and make myself a copy, paste it, and I'll go and change the name. So properties, new one. Okay, go and open that up, and it kind of ties into the wipeout option. So I go others, wipeout, draw my wipeout. Okay, and wipes out the center there. Go and close that, save the changes, and then I could do one of two things. I could actually just insert it as a new, or I'm actually going to do a replace here and pick out my new one, and so we can actually use that on our cabinet layout. Or if I had another one that I was inserting fresh, I could use that one for the beginning, and then they wouldn't see my proprietary information in the middle of that 2D cabinet symbol there. New options for unarchiving. This is kind of a big one, I think, especially if you're importing archives of other projects. So I'm going to go into the project manager, unarchive a new project, and when I get to the symbol properties, so I'm going to accept that, and could have made any changes on the default there. But when I get to the symbols page, I actually can get into the properties of that symbol before I import it into my library. So I can actually fix or correct any new information or updated information during the import process, rather than having to go through and change it after the fact. Alright, so I'm going to go and do update, and I'll go next. Shows me all the stuff that it's going to do a verification on. So you can see this first one, I actually don't have one in my existing library. So I now have the ability of right-clicking and going to properties, whereas last year we had to import it in and then fix it after the fact. So if I go properties, now I can go through and change all my settings as need be, accept, and then continue all the way to the finish, and then go and let it continue with the import there. And again, still be able to open the project and be able to get directly into the symbols that I imported in. I think this next one's a great addition. It's called Component Search, and what it is if we're over in our components tree and I right click at any point, either at the top of the name of the project, I have a search components, or I could go to a particular location and search components, and it gives me a quick way of finding my components. So what I can do is come up to the very top and say I'm looking for maybe an S3 or something, and because of that SQL database, again running the behind the scenes for SOLIDWORKS Electrical, it finds the stuff very quick. And I also have a nice preview window, so I can just do a single click on the particular item and it'll take me to those objects. From here I can actually go to drawing, go to browser, or also switch to a function view. So I'm going to go to drawing, and it'll take me right to that particular component. So real big enhancement, I think, for locating components, especially when you start getting into the really large projects. For those that use cross-references, specifically cross-references showing components that have multiple locations, this one's for you. This one's cross-reference configurations. So if I come to one of my cross-references, right-click, and then I have this Edit Cross-Reference Style, go into that, and it actually takes me into the cross-reference drawing configurations right from here. So I can go through and make any changes I need to right from the right-click menu, rather than having to go over to my Projects tab and go in through that way. PDF export is this next one, and I think this is a really good enhancement for creating the documents for the end user. So I'm over here on the Import Export tab. I'll go and do Export PDF Files, and there's this new option, Create Bookmarks and Hyperlinks. So I'm just going to go and give this a name, and I'll go and say Print, and it's going to go and create a PDF based off of the document that I have. If you notice, there is also a setting in there for one PDF per book, but the advantage of that new checkbox is the fact that I actually get a broken down under the bookmarks, so I can actually expand that out, see just the drawing list, just the schematics, dig into the schematics part of it. So all that stuff is still there, and I can pan around on it. If I go into my components, I'll expand that out. Oh, there it goes. And then I go to one of the items, it'll actually take me to that item on that schematic. So it's actually also, I think, essentially hyperlinking to that page where that device is at. So another very useful thing for the end user there. So they're giving them some of the functionality on the output just in, again, Adobe Acrobat Reader. Filter Project Manager is pretty straightforward, but it's still a great one to show. Project Manager tab, and there's a new button for filters. And what it does is it opens up this pane over here on the left there, allows me to go through and filter what all my projects might be. So I'll go and type in a name that I'm looking for, hit enter, and then it filters the All Projects tab there based off of whatever my criteria is there. So definitely a big help, especially if you start getting a lot of projects in your project manager there. And again, that's the filters button. This next one is copy and special paste, and this is a new one that allows us to help control the component marks and wire numbers and a few other things. So I'm going to go and select a section of the schematic that I want to reuse, and I'll go to the Edit tab, and I'll go and go Copy, and you'll notice that there's a new button called Special Paste. And again, you can do a keystroke of Control-Shift-V for special paste. This is similar to other Windows programs. But then when I go and place my copied schematic, get that lined up there, it opens up with this additional dialog. So I can say keep existing, or create a new location, maybe create a new function mark, and maybe create a new component number, or I could also do a keep existing, so if I had two items that were part of the same device. So I'm going to go and say create new mark, hit OK there, and you'll see that I've got the new location, new component mark for both of those there. Okay. This next one is definitely a new one and a very useful one. It's called Equipotential Conflicts. So they've kind of integrated a little bit more tools with the 2014 version for resolving equipotential issues. So if I had a wire over here that is something entirely different, so it's a control wire, 12 volts, and then again these are my three-phase wires off to the left there. I'm actually going to attach this to that wire and drop it over there. So now there's an equipotential issue between there, so I'm going to right click, and then I have the option to solve equipotential conflicts. So I'm going to choose that, and it says choose an equal, so I can either go push it to that line level, or do nothing. So I might push it to that one. And then it takes on that the settings of that L2-7. Still a little bit of an equipotential issue just because of the fact that it's shorting between the phases there, but still it's a very useful tool for helping to diagnose those. Alright, so let's move on to the next one here. Multiple attributes. So this one requires a little bit of setup, but it's definitely an interesting one. I think it'll help a lot of you out there that have long attribute information. So I'm going to go into my symbols manager, copy a symbol, paste it, and then I'll go and let's go and change that. So I'm just going to call this new, and we'll go and call that new. Okay. And I'll go and hit OK, and I'll open that up. So I've got several attributes in here. In fact, I'm going to get rid of this user data 2 field. So I'm specifically looking at this user data 1 field. And what I want it to do is I want to give multiple lines rather than just a single line for that attribute, just because I'm going to have a lot of user data in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this new button over on the edit symbol, so multiple attribute. I'll say up to 4 lines, and distance between lines, that's fine, and I'm not going to specify on screen because I want it to auto place them for me. So what I'll do is I'll go and bring my cursor over onto the screen, click on it, notice that it changes that 1 into 4 separate attributes. Go and close out, go and save that symbol, and then I'll go and insert that symbol into my diagram here. So I'm going to drop that in, and let's go and add some information into the user data 1. Alright, so I've got this really long set of text there, so I'm going to just go and hit OK so you can see what it looks like. And this is what we're typically used to. It just gives us a really long line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back in there, and then I'm actually going to do Shift, and then it's the vertical line that we use as a separator. So for on my keyboard, it's Shift and then the button just above the Enter key. Might be different on yours, but it is that vertical line character there. Okay, and I'll go and hit OK, and you'll see that it actually will wrap the text down onto multiple lines. So that's one user data field, multiple lines there. So very useful, especially if you have a lot of information that's got to be filled in there. For more CAD/CAS topics, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/DDICAD or tech blog at ddicad.com/tech center. Thanks for watching.